This is Perspectives in Psychology by me, Katie Knox. In this presentation, I will be showing an understanding of perspectives in psychology. I will then describe two psychological perspectives. I will evaluate the key assumptions of the identified perspectives. I will follow on by looking at the key theorists and analysing similarities and differences between the two perspectives. Finally, I will evaluate the application of perspectives in contemporary issues in psychology. There are 5 main perspectives in psychology. They are behavioural, cognitive, psychodynamic or psychoanalyst, biological and social. A quick look at them all before I look at 2 in more detail. Behavioural. There's 2 types of behavioural psychology. Radical behaviour, which is where all the learning is a result of stimuli and response mechanisms, and social learning. And social learning is the second, where it is believed that behaviour comes from watching and copying other people, like role models. Cognitive. This perspective looks at mental processes, including how we think. It covers areas like memory, perception, recall, and forgetting. It literally means mental processes. This perception shows us how cognitive psychology affects our behaviour. It is all the processes that are rejected by behavioural psychologists for being unobservable. For example, problem solving, reasoning, decision making, and memory. Psychoanalyst and psychodynamic. This is a perspective developed by Sigmund Freud and focuses on the unconscious processes such as desire and conflict and how they affect a person's behaviour. It has 3 concepts. They are ID, ego and superego, and how these influence our actions. The theory of psychodynamic psychology is that we are all animals and we are driven by our instinct and impulses. However, that it is society and our environment that keeps us under control. Biological psychology is a perspective that is about our actions and behaviour and how they're all controlled through our how they are controlled through our biology, through neurotransmitters and brain functions, and that we are influenced through our genetics. You must understand how the brain works and its functions to be able to understand this perception. Social psychology. This is a perspective that behavioural psychology is based on. That our behaviour is based on social conformity by fitting into social norms and what is socially acceptable. That we as humans conform and sometimes change ourselves to fit in and not be seen as going against the norm. Social influence and that neuropsychology has a lot to do with our environment and what culture that we live in. The 2 I have chosen to do are cognitive and psychodynamic. I'm going to describe cognitive in a bit more detail. As mentioned before, cognitive psychology looks at mental processes and how we as a person think and how it affects our behaviour. It is the recognizing, organisation and interpretation of information from our sensory experiences. Every sense has receptors that find certain types of energy in our environment, and our brain uses this energy found by receptors to process and interpret certain things. There are 2 types of processing in cognitive psychology. Bottom-up processing. This is when our senses gather info from our environment and convert them into action potentials and transmit the signals to our brains. And then there's top-down processing. This is where our brain uses knowledge, expectations, and our past experiences we've already had to interpret things in our environment. Cognitive psychology works on the following principles: that our brains cannot pay attention to more than one thing at a time. This is selective attention. And that our brain can be fooled by optical illusions. This is our perception. Psychodynamic or psychoanalyst psychology. This second perspective I'll look at in detail. This perspective was developed by Sigmund Freud and focuses on the unconsciousness processes and how they shape our behaviour. It also goes into the concept of ID, ego, and superego and their influence on our behaviour. The theory in psychodynamic psychology, is that we are all animals whom are driven by our instinct. It is only the society and who we are surrounded by that brings our animal impulses under control. This perspective believes that our unconscious mind holds our deepest and darkest secrets and trauma, yet it is still actively affecting our daily lives and consciousness. The concept also believes that our unconscious will keep information from the past that will then affect conscious thoughts and reactions in today. They assume that most of our childhood experiences shape our unconscious mind and who we are as a person. I'm going to evaluate the assumptions of these two perspectives. The assumptions of cognitive psychology are that they believe behaviour is consisted of internal mental processes, which are difficult to observe. They believe that mental processes such as memory, perception, reasoning, and language process information and affect our behaviour. The cognitive approach to psychology was a result of discontent with behavioural psychology and the invention of computers in 1960. Human nature and behaviour is mostly influenced by our inner mental processes. They hypothesize that the human mind works in a similar way to a computer, and that people are information processors, which involve an input, a storage, and a retrieval of data. Our internal processes can be studied empirically and also affect our behaviour. The strengths of these assumptions are that you can have control experiments, including MRI scans, to produce reliable and retrievable outcomes. The practical application of cognitive psychology can help us to understand our inner mental processes. For example, schemas. We gain an insight into psychology conditions such as depression. Beck in 1967 suggested that depression was caused by negative schemas related to the future, the world that we live in, or our environment, and ourselves. Cognitive behaviour therapy, or CBT, can be used effectively to treat many mental conditions. The limitations of cognitive psychology are that it is criticised for ignoring the impact of emotions and what they have on behaviour, results, and reducing human activity due to computers. The genetic causes of mental disorders such as bipolar and schizophrenia are also disregarded and considered reductionist. And it explains, it oversimplifies behaviours in a single component. The ecological validity of the lab experiments is reduced because most patients take complicated tests and are in an artificial environment. The assumptions of psychodynamic psychology are that they believe that all behaviour has an underlying cause, that different aspects of a person's unconscious mind struggle against others, both mental processes and the environment contribute to adult behaviour. Behaviour, feelings, and mental health issues are all radiated from childhood experiences. All behaviours are a result of your unconscious. The strengths are the way in which Dr. Freud related his childhood experiences and adult characteristics, and is accepted globally. The Freudian psychoanalysis is still being used. The perspective assumes that the past experiences, especially childhood ones, play a key role in how we feel and behave throughout our lives. The limitations are that this approach is not considered scientific, as it looks at many theories and concepts that cannot be studied empirically. This application relies purely on subjective interpretation. Evaluating the work of key theorists on the two perspectives in psychology. The main theorist for cognitive psychology are: number one, Jean Piaget. He is a Swiss psychologist with his theory of cognitive development. This theory on children and their cognitive development has 4 stages. The sensomotor stage, which is from birth to 2 years, where they learn mainly by using their senses and through movement. The pre-operational stage, which is from 2 years to 7, where children start to use language, but their thinking is still egocentric, which means that they cannot see or understand other people's perspectives. Concrete operation stage, which is 7 years to 11, the child begins to think more logically about concrete events. They can understand conversations and do simple mental operations. And then formal operation stage, which is 11 years old to adult, where you are able to think abstractly and take part in hypothetical thinking. Piaget was also one of the first psychologists to study cognitive development and made huge contributions to the field, even so much as it is still used in modern education. The second was Lev Vygotsky. He was a theorist who believed that he had the social cultural theory of child development, which emphasises the role of their social interactions and culture to shape and grow a child's cognitive abilities. The key concept of this theory is that the zone of proximal development, or ZPD, this is the difference between what a child can achieve on their own and what they can achieve with the help of a knowledgeable other. It's in this theory, the main function that people are born with are attention, sensation, perception, and memory. Based on this theory, teachers now use this and are trained in how to use it to see when children can move on with their learning, and it's also used to do mixed ability classes to encourage peer teaching. A key theorist in psychodynamic psychology, the first theorist of this perception is Dr. Sigmund Freud. Freud's theory has become the cornerstone of psychodynamic psychology, especially the theory that the mind is broken into 3 levels: the conscious, the pre-conscious, and the unconscious. This is also known as ID, which is your instinct, your ego, which is your reality, and your superego, which is your morality. Freud's theory influenced many therapeutic approaches to psychology that are still used today, with aims that you can bring out material from your unconscious into your conscious and resolve your issues. This theory is also proven to be the framework for psychologists to understand that past experiences, especially childhood experiences, can still affect us in our adulthood. The second theorist is Carl Jung and his unconscious theory. Jung had worked with Dr. Freud for much of his theories, however they split when the differences were found. The main difference that they had was that Freud thought the unconscious was only based on past experiences, whereas Jung believed that archetypes were more influential. in shaping a person's personality and their motivations. He believes there are four main archetypes: anima or animus. The anima is the female image in the male psyche and vice versa. It represents one's true self rather than who we perceive ourselves to be. It also acts as a primary source of communication with our unconscious. The shadow. This is made up of sex and life instincts, part of the unconscious, and is made up of the weaknesses, desires, and shortcomings where we adapt to cultural norms and expectations. Our self represents the unified unconscious and conscious of a person. Creating the self occurs with a process called individuation, where many aspects of a person's personality are integrated. Disharmony in the self can cause psychological problems. And then there's the persona. This is how we present ourselves in the world. The word personalization means mask, but not a literal mask. It represents all the social masks we use among different groups of people and in different situations. Our persona also appears in our dreams. Thanks to Jung's theory, it helps broaden our understanding of the unconscious mind and how important it is in our lives. The similarities and differences between the two perspectives. The similarities are that they both acknowledge nature and nurture. They agree that nature has a role in shaping our behaviour. Both have a holistic approach, with both Jung and Freud understanding the mind is complex. Both are non-empirical, as some of the unconscious processes can be seen in a scientific way and recorded as such. The differences are that cognitive psychology approach uses soft determinism as it acknowledges both internal and external factors. Cognitive psychology is both empirical and non, as it relies on empirical for most of its studies. Psychodynamic is also determinist, as it totally rejects the idea of free will. It believes that it's all determined by unconscious motives. The application of two perspectives in contemporary issues in psychology. Contemporary issues are opportunities and problems that have a relevance in today's life. An issue is meant as a social, economic, ethical, or environmental. Different perspectives can be applied in diversity and inclusion, the workplace and organisations, mental health and well-being. One key issue today, in 2024, is that more than 1 in 7 UK adults say their mental health is currently either bad or the worst it's ever been. This is with Forth with Life from this year, 2024. Psychology and mental health are strongly linked. Psychology researches the concept of stress and anxiety and resilience and depression, and why there is a growing concern over mental health issues today in society. The following perspectives can be used in mental health and well-being issues, providing the effective interventions. Cognitive and behavioural psychology have brought CBT, or cognitive behaviour therapy. Psychodynamic has given us psychodynamic therapy, and biological has given the population medications. Psychology and CBT. CBT was developed by Aaron Beck in the 1960s. It is a cognitive psychology and focuses on changing and challenging negative thoughts and behaviour to improve our mental health and well-being. It is mainly used to treat anxiety, depression, and some eating disorders like bulimia. It is a shorter treatment which includes 5 to 20 sessions and is highly structured, with client and therapist working together to discuss the problem and setting goals together. The limitations for this therapy are that it involves a lot of work in between sessions, which can be time consuming and needs solid commitment. The high structure also might not suit everyone's needs, and it is not able to be used for all mental health issues. Psychodynamic therapy. This is a psychodynamic perspective therapy. This is talking therapy and founded by Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Melanie Klein, and Anna Freud. It involves talking to a professional about your problems to find a solution together and to get some relief. It is used to understand thoughts and feelings which affect behaviour and it is also used to understand unconscious motivations behind these feelings and thoughts. This is a long-time therapy and involves 50 or more sessions and is used to treat anxiety, depression, eating disorders, substance abuse, and social disorders. This is a long therapy and it can be time-consuming and costly. In conclusion, psychology can be split into at least 5 different perspectives, 2 of which I've looked at in detail, including their assumptions and similarities and differences. I've looked at work done by some of the great psychologists and looked at how psychology is used today. I hope this presentation has been informative.